SLT Fibre and experience the power of fibre technology. Sri Lanka's only super fast internet connection. SLT Fibre. Call 1212 now.
Tonight, LTTE comeback. Malaysian anti-terror police arrests suspects linked to large-scale terror fundraising. Gota's man Thondaman. Ceylon Workers' Congress leader pledges allegiance to Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Nothing to lose. New Democratic Front presidential candidate Sajith Premadasa reveals his lack of commitments and ties, qualifying him for presidency. Boon or bane? With signs of the US-China trade war showing signs of thawing, what will the impact on Sri Lanka be?
So trade is going to be the engine of growth for Sri Lanka, and with the global downturn, we're going to have to work a lot harder in promoting our exports.
We need to put our trade policies and economic development policies right on track at home.
All these stories and much more coming your way on First at 9 this 30th of October 2019.
Fair and Lovely men ගෑවට පස්සේ marks අඩු වෙලා fairness වැඩි වෙලා.
Marks අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ fairness standard එක වැඩි කරගන්න. Fair and Lovely men anti-marks cream.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening to you and welcome to First at 9, AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. The Ceylon Workers' Congress has also joined the camp of presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, pledging to back him in the looming election. The unanimous decision was arrived at following a meeting with the National Council of the Ceylon Workers' Congress this morning under the auspices of its party leader, MP Arumugam Thondama.
Our leader Arumugam Thondaman and the party's National Council met today. Our leader Thondaman and Party Secretary Anushya Sivaraja proposed who they wish to support to the council. There are 300 members in this council across the country, and all of them unanimously agreed to support Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
නායකතුමාට බාර දුන්නා ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයාට උදව් කරන්න. ඔබතුමාලා සාකච්ඡා කරලා එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ දැන් මෙහිදී එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ ඒකකතාවයකට පක්ෂ දෙකටම සාකච්ඡා කරා.
We held discussions with both parties and several other parties as well, where we voiced several matters. But all the members decided to support Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The National Council, led by Anushya Sivaraja, unanimously decided to support Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The SLPP accepted all our 32 demands and agreed to include it into their policies.
Following the announcement of the Ceylon Workers' Congress decision to support SLPP's presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Hatton and Bogavanthalava erupted in celebration.
Now, as the presidential race hots up, SLPP presidential hopeful Gotabaya Rajapaksa insisted that it is the party's policies which is attracting other political parties to partner with it. Addressing a rally in Kadawatha today, the presidential hopeful also expressed his gratitude to the Sri Lanka Freedom Party.
A public rally organised by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was worked off in Kadawatha today under the auspices of its presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Several representatives from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, including the party's senior vice chairman MP Nimal Siripal de Silva, MP Lasantha Alagiyawanna and Nishantha Muthuhettigama were present during the occasion. Gotabaya Rajapaksa arrived at the rally to rapturous applause of the people. Leader of the party, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, who attended the rally thereafter, too was given a warm welcome. Every party who pledged their support are with us because of our policies. The Ceylon Workers' Congress, led by MP Arumugam Thondaman, too has unanimously decided to support us. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party has become a strength to us. We were able to increase our support base to 70% because they joined hands with us. We wholeheartedly and respectfully welcome them. We are able to enjoy the privilege of various people-friendly policies because the SLFP introduced them. A government that depends on NGOs intent on fulfilling foreign agendas will not be able to reaffirm national security and respect our nationality. We travelled from village to village and have always asked what we can do for you. We are unafraid to say that when we come to power, we will always seek your advice and lead this country to ensure that citizens' needs are met. We are not ashamed to say that. We were able to increase the country's per capita income by 7.5%, but now it has fallen to 1.6%. If this government continues, this country will be destroyed. Let the results of Alpita become the result of the entire country.
හිසකෙස් යනවාද විසඳුම දින 6න් පුරාණේ පටන් භාවිත කරන ඉපෙරණි ශාකසාර වට්ටෝරුවකට අනුව නිපදවෙන ගණේෂා hair growth oil සියලුම ෆාමසි සහ වෙළඳ සැල් වලින්.
UMP Tisathanayaka announced that several SLFP organisers from the Batiklo district pledged support to the New Democratic Front presidential candidate Sajid Premadasa today. Meanwhile, the New Democratic Front held its first public rally in Vallava today following the Alpitiya Pradesh Sabha election. Addressing the crowds, presidential candidate Minister Sajid Premadasa stated that his life has been dedicated to serving the public, as he is devoid of traditional responsibilities such as family and other legacies, allowing him to focus fully on the needs of the country and the public.
Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajid Premadasa, chose Vallava as the venue for his first public campaign rally following the Alpitiya Pradesh Sabha election setback. In his address, he stated that his entire life is free to be dedicated for public service, as unlike other candidates, he is free of responsibilities on family legacies.
My entire life has been dedicated to public service. This is because I have no other duties, nor do I have any other responsibilities. I don't have the responsibility of looking after a family. I don't have a family legacy or any relations legacies to look after. The only relations I have to protect or look after are the people of this country.
Well, presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajid Premadasa, says that he will introduce a women's charter which will ensure that women's rights are upheld. Speaking at an event in Colombo recently, which saw the participation of women leaders, he pledged that content within the charter will be part of the legislature and will be non-discriminatory.
I would say Sri Lanka's biggest problem is the complete lack of accountability.
I have embarked on this particular journey not to become a political scarecrow. Now, in terms of governance, those who are corrupt will be punished and punished severely. One has to be held accountable for one's own actions and for the actions of the various responsibilities that he or she holds.
The presidential candidate added that a women's charter will be introduced as part of his political manifesto.
Now, the Women's Charter will consist of the rights and the responsibilities of catering to fulfill women's rights. So, the Women's Charter is primarily declaratory in substance. I propose to sign a social contract with the women of this country, and it will be my obligation to ensure that the Women's Charter is given legal enactment through parliamentary legislation. So what's in the Charter will become law.
The New Democratic Front presidential hopeful meanwhile stressed that he won't be hesitant to implement the death penalty on drug traffickers.
If the present system of justice is incapable of preventing the drug lords from conducting their businesses, there has to be a change in the administration of justice. In other words, I would not hesitate to activate the death penalty against the major drug business personnel. However, we also have to ensure that the judicial processes that are in place.
Presidential Counsel Ali Sabri, speaking at the forum titled Catalyst for Growth, organized by the youth arm of the movement, Viyatmaga, stated that the pride and self-respect of the Muslim community in Sri Lanka has been diminished due to the actions of the government of good governance. He added that the only way the country can be brought back to its previous state is by Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa being elected to the top seat of the country.
President's Counsel Ali Sabri blamed the government of good governance for the Muslim community being labelled extremists after the Easter Sunday attacks and stated that the country can only be rebuilt under Gotabaya Rajapaksa presidency.
This has been turned into a complete mess, and the country has been completely ruined. The self-respect of the Muslim community that has lived in this country with pride has been taken away from them, and we have all been labelled as extremists due to the actions of this government. The only way this country can be rebuilt is by Gotabaya Rajapaksa being elected as president. Only he has the strength to achieve this.
The Sri Lankan delegation to the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly has made public calls for a breakthrough in the current nuclear disarmament deadlock. The delegation, led by Foreign Secretary Ravinath Aresinghe, attended the Committee on Disarmament and International Security in New York this Friday. It called for a moratorium on the use of autonomous weapons system while negotiations for a framework on its use is drawn up. The UN High Representative on Disarmament Izumi Nakamitsu thanked the Foreign Secretary for Sri Lanka's presidency of the Conference of Disarmament in 2018 and 2015, which saw major strides in limiting the use of drones and cluster bombs. In the delegation final statement, it hoped for progress under Algeria's presidency of the Conference of Disarmament in 2020, which would aid the agenda of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Malaysian police have arrested 5 suspects, bringing the total of 12 over promoting and supporting the LTTE and securing large-scale funding for the resurrection of the banned terrorist outfit. According to Malaysian Counter-Terrorism Police, 2 of the suspects arrested in the raids were found to have been planning a lone wolf attack on the Sri Lankan embassy in the country.
Malaysian counter-terrorism chief says people should not confuse sympathy for the plight of the Tamil minority in Sri Lanka with supporting the LTTE terror group. His comments were quoted today as Malaysian police came under criticism after it detained 5 more Malaysians in a swoop against what it said were followers and sympathizers of the defunct LTTE. The counter-terrorism division head of the police in Malaysia said it is an offence to support the LTTE as they are a terror group. On the latest string of arrests reported by media, authorities said the 5 suspects included a 52-year-old teacher, a city councillor and a factory worker and a security supervisor. It added that they were detained for promoting and supporting LTTE while securing funds for the terror group. Police had said last week that one of the men arrested previously had wanted to attack the Sri Lankan embassy in Malaysia. In the meantime, here in Sri Lanka, a member of the LTTE was arrested at the Kaliwedi bridge of Serunura while in possession of a T-56 firearm. The suspect is identified as 36-year-old Joseph Peter Robinson. Interrogations of the suspect had led to the discovery of 5 hand grenades, 154 T-56 ammunition, 62 9mm bullets and 9 7mm bullets, as well as 62 various detonators. Police said a 23-year-old woman thought to be the suspect's wife and another woman of 28 years of age identified as the suspect's sister were arrested during the relevant operation. They added that 4 T-shirts bearing ex-LTT leader Velupille Prabhakaran's photograph and 4 mobile phones were also taken into custody.
We will now go into a short commercial break. Stay tuned for more news right after that. Welcome back to the news. US President Donald Trump on Friday outlined the first phase of a deal to end a trade war with China and suspended a threatened planned tariff hike. But officials on both sides said much more work needs to be done before an accord could be agreed. The impact of this, however, has not been received well with the global economy as it is currently experiencing a slowdown. However, in the backdrop of such troubled times, can this be seen as an opportunity for Sri Lanka? First at 9 took a look into the implications of the trade war on the country and what should be the next step to ensure the country stays afloat in such unstable macroeconomic conditions. The US and China have imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of each other's goods over the past 15 months, casting a pall over the global economy. The US wants better protection for its intellectual property and an end to both cyber theft and forced transfer of technology to Chinese firms. It also wants China to reduce industrial subsidies and improve access to Chinese markets for US companies. This week's talks in Washington were the first high-level negotiations in more than 2 months where the US agreed to suspend its next tariff hikes on Chinese imports. US President Donald Trump said negotiators had reached a Phase 1 deal that would include increased agricultural purchases and address financial services and technology theft. The negotiations kicked off amidst renewed tensions following the US blacklisting of 28 Chinese entities over human rights concerns.
You know, there was a lot of friction between the United States and China. And now it's a love fest. That's a good thing. But that's good for China and it's good for us, but it's good for the world.
Although the Trump administration and China declared a temporary truce, the grievances that led them to impose tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of each other's goods remain largely unresolved. So far, the US has imposed tariffs on more than $360 billion of Chinese goods, while China has retaliated with tariffs on more than $110 billion of US products. According to the Executive Director of the Global Economy Program at the Lakshman Kadaragama Institute, Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja, the impact of the trade war has resulted in a global economic slowdown amidst other factors.
Global growth is likely to grow at a shade over 3% compared with the projected 3.5% at the beginning of this year. The uncertainties caused by the Brexit and what happens to the UK and the European Union. Also, we had the oil shock coming out of the drone attack on the Saudi oil fields, which reduced the capacity by a half.
So what would be the impact of the trade war on Sri Lanka, which too revised its GDP growth from around 4% to 2.9% this year?
On the one hand, we will see a slowdown in the major markets which Sri Lanka exports to the United States and Europe. So therefore, we will perhaps export less. We will have probably less foreign investment coming in at a time when foreign investment itself has been quite difficult globally. And third, we may get a slower recovery than tourists than we expect. On the other hand, there are also opportunities for Sri Lanka. As China slows down, there may be more footloose foreign investment seeking out new market opportunities, particularly in manufacturing. Sri Lanka could benefit from that, particularly in the labor-intensive component. Within that, we may well see increased opportunities for us to trade regionally with India. And I think Sri Lanka can benefit if we have the right kind of strategy.
Meanwhile, Professor of Economics at the University of Colombo, Professor Sirimal Aberatna, is of the view that this can be seen as an opportunity for Sri Lanka due to the shift in global trade towards the Asian region.
Our trade relations with the United States is not going to be affected by this. Our trade share to United States from their point of view is a very small percentage. Our market is now expanding in the Asian region, which means now although we are going to be affected by the trade war between the US and China and trade contraction in advanced countries, there is another big market which is opening up in developing countries, particularly in Asia.
Economists, however, believe that if Sri Lanka is to bolster its trade with other nations and survive in unstable macroeconomic conditions, it must firstly ensure that there is a common economic policy within the country that is formulated with the consensus of all relevant stakeholders.
So trade is going to be the engine of growth for Sri Lanka, and with the global downturn, we're going to have to work a lot harder in promoting our exports. We're going to have to draw much more inspiration from the markets of India and China, and we're going to have to use the advantage of the GSP Plus, which is time-bound for the next period. This requires us to deal with further issues of red tape behind the border, to make sure that we manage our exchange rate in a predictable manner, continue to open up our trade, and encourage our larger companies to be at the forefront of our export drive. Now, all of this is a long-term strategy, and we need to try to get the different politicians of different stages of persuasion to agree on a common playbook for Sri Lanka in the next 5, 6, 7 years.
We need to put our trade policies and economic development policies right on track at home, rather than looking at the global negative implications coming from US-China trade war. Then actually we will be able to exploit these opportunities, emerging opportunities with trade expansion in Asia.
Market analysts expect market activity at the Colombo bourse to slow down in the upcoming week, coupled with low foreign participation. During the week, the All-Share Price Index and the S&P SL20 gained 2.54% and 4.03% respectively, while recording an average daily turnover of 756 million rupees. We have Achudan Srirangan from First Capital Holdings with market expectations.
We expect the market to slow down with the ambitious cautious by the high-and-wide president election campaign and coupled with the releasing upcoming company quarterly statement for this week. And foreign participants expect to continue with the low note amidst current political uncertainty environment. And turnover level is likely to be moderate with the continuous activities in the market, especially driven by the low interest rate environment.
And we will now go into a short commercial break. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back on international news. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces say that the Turkish incursion into northern Syria has revived the Islamic State and called on allies to close off airspace to Turkish bombers. Turkey launched the cross-border assault against Kurdish forces last week after US President Donald Trump withdrew US troops from the border region. Turkey claims that the Kurdish YPG is a terrorist group aligned with militants in Turkey. This comes amid IS car bombings in Qamishli following the Turkish shelling of a jail that the SDF claims allows IS detainees to escape. On to our news overseas, Hunter Biden, son of US presidential hopeful Joe Biden, has announced that he will resign from the management company of a private equity fund backed by Chinese state-owned entities. This comes amidst claims from US President Donald Trump that the Biden's connections to foreign powers warrant investigation. In a statement to the press, Trump called on China to investigate the family. However, the US president is currently facing an impeachment inquiry himself on the grounds of pressurizing Ukraine into investigating Joe Biden. On that note, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.